the point is that I did get to spend a lot of time with farmers, and I asked them as I was with them about the whole EU and the farmer protests and things. And what you have there is a uh, is basically an agricultural welfare state, and it's not all what it seems. So if you'll think about it, the stuff that we've seen on the news, Sina, when I assume you've seen some of these, these tractorcade, these tractor protests on the news, and the thing that strikes me about all of them is how big all the tractors are. These are big farmers, and of course, having been there several times, I knew that many of the farms in Europe are very small. And so since I got back, I just got a nice long email from the fella who 10 years ago, he sent this long, wonderful email to me on the 10th year anniversary of when he brought me to Europe for the first time. And he lives in the Netherlands. And of course, as you know, the Netherlands is where all these tractor protests started. And then they've grown to they've gone out to the other countries. And I want to just mention, I just want to read a couple of sentences from this email he sent me. He said, I won't, let's see. I won't assume that you remember a late evening interview you gave on that first trip to a big black-haired half American lady, mostly likely wearing a black leather jacket, who came from the pig industry. I do remember that. I remember this media interview with this lady. It's 10 years ago. I still remember how you were able in 1.5 hours to lead her from her own base to your configuration. And we found that article based on that 2 years later in a very obscure virtual corner, since her context would not want to know about it. This lady, then, who lives close to us, has since catapulted into a political celebrity with a both tough and folksy appearance and style at the helm of a new political party. There in Europe, they often have as many as 5 or 6, political parties, and they make these coalitions, parliamentary type of government, who at one point looked like she might become the next prime minister. All right, so this is a lady that was just a journalist writing for a magazine when I was there the first time 10 years ago. All right, here's the kicker. Well, good thing she didn't get elected, because she is essentially a mouthpiece of the agro industry, which basically runs the show and also does the sponsoring of tractor protests, tractor parades, and highway blockages that have spread, managing to keep out of sight, including on the European scale, and where it successfully lobbied for 10 more years of Roundup and is busy killing, as we speak, a great ambitious plan to save Europe's nature and water and anything else worth saving, as an understatement. So the awful things, the horribleness is all over the place, while the regenerative dynamic is what gives us hope and mostly models to tweak and replicate. Generally, there's 2 different universes, one with a foot on the brake and head in the sand, and the other embodying a new creative, entrepreneurial, spiritually grounded, inclusive, and open culture. The reason I wanted to read that is because it explains why the tractor protests seem to be extremely well funded, and why all the tractors are great big. These protests are being funded by the industrial agriculture complex to save them from environmental oversight on chemical and industrial agriculture. You don't see, here's my point, Sina, you don't see little farmers. And generally, who came to see me at these seminars were small farmers. They weren't the big farmers. They were the smaller entrepreneurial innovators, and they were not participating in the protests. And in fact, I asked one group, I said, if you could wave a magic wand today and do one thing for European agriculture, what would it be? And without question, it was eliminate all the subsidies. What people in this country don't understand is that nearly half, think about this, nearly half of every farmer's income in Europe is a subsidy. And it's not a subsidy like we think. I mean, we have crop insurance here. So if, wheat prices drop below a certain threshold, the government steps in, or if you have hail damage or drought damage or whatever. I mean, the thresholds to get government money here is pretty low. All right. So a lot of people get it. But in the EU, if you own farm property, you automatically get a check up to $1,000 an acre every year. Okay. Well, what that means is you overbuy equipment, you overbuild barns. It completely skews the economics, the business aspects of running your farm. And then the other subsidies come from all sorts of other things. Like if you leave a cavity tree for a woodpecker to live in, you fill out the form, the government sends you $1,000 check. You leave a nest for a water bird, for example, on the edge of your field. You take a picture, you fill out the paperwork, the government sends you a check for $5,000 for not hurting that bird's nest. And so there are all these kind of little ticky-tack ancillary things to fill out the forms, and taken all together, half of all European farmer income is a direct government paycheck, direct government subsidy. So when the environmentalists say, let's clean up our water system, let's not dump all this Roundup on the land, and we can debate about how much the government has to get involved with all this, or how much it should get involved with all this. But the point is, the tug of war, what I'm getting at is the tug of war in Europe is between essentially an environmental movement that is tired of the environmental degradation that the industrial agriculture complex has foisted upon its land, primarily because people live next to it. In the U.S., we're so spread out. A lot of these great big farms, you don't live next to. I mean, you see reports about it, but there aren't thousands of people who live within a mile of the aerial spraying of Roundup on the crop. And so people don't see it, except in magazine articles, or Nature Conservancy reports or something like that, World Watch. Okay. But in general, we don't see it. But in especially in the Netherlands, where you have several hundred people living per square mile throughout the whole country, here's my point, Sina. Farmers can't get as opaque about their practices. People see the result of farmers' practices much more aggressively than they see them in our country.